What felt like the impossible for many Hungarians has finally become possible. After 16 years in power, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán and his party Fidesz have been resoundingly voted out of office, losing to an opposition led by Peter Magyar, who has promised to fight corruption and economic stagnation.
Together we replaced the Orban regime. Together we liberated Hungary. Together we took back our homeland.
But I'm not here to talk about what will happen next inside Hungary. We're taking a closer look at how these election results change things across Europe.
Hungary under Orban within the European context has often been described as a spoiler. I think it's been a little bit more sinister than that. Hungary has really undermined virtually any kind of effective European foreign policy.
That's Jasmin Mujanovic. He's a political scientist and the author of 2 books on the Western Balkans and the host of the international affairs podcast Balkans. He explains how Hungary has sabotaged European Union efforts, particularly when it comes to supporting Ukraine.
Because you have to recall that virtually all foreign policy decisions within the European Union are essentially made through consensus. I mean, we can sort of get lost in the details, but that's basically what has allowed Hungary and a handful of other outliers that it has occasionally aligned itself with, such as Fico, Slovakia, and others, to blockade what have otherwise been very popular and near unanimous decisions to support Ukraine by other European states. To the extent that we can expect a transformation in Hungary's foreign policy, and I think we can, it does seem to be the case that voters of TISA are broadly in favor of a new Hungarian foreign policy, in particular as concerns Ukraine. And we've all seen the scenes of Hungarian voters, citizens making very clear their antipathy towards Russia during opposition rallies, now incoming government rallies.
But Hungary didn't just hamper European Union foreign policy. Orban has also sought out like-minded political leaders in neighboring countries.
I think the key thing to understand is that Orban was instrumental in creating a kind of illiberal bloc, in particular within the so-called Visegrad countries of the European Union, that over the course of the 2010s in particular really emerged as a kind of competing pole to the sort of old guard Western European liberal establishment that we might associate with countries like France and Germany and others.
Jasmin says Slovakia is one place where we've seen Hungary's anti-democratic influence, with its Prime Minister Robert Fico carrying on a kind of bromance with Orban.
Arguably, Robert Fico was probably the most significant of these. And we know through public reporting by various other Central European and European media agencies, including various investigative journalists, that Hungary and the Hungarian intelligence and political establishment under Viktor Orbán worked very, very decisively with great determination to try to secure not only Fico's initial election, but then also his subsequent return to power. And that was something that was very much coordinated with Moscow, that there was a kind of shared vision as far as Slovakia's potential role in buttressing this illiberal bloc. And I think what's sort of the neatest way to describe it is that Fico and Orban would oftentimes always kind of keep each other's backs, right? And so if you could pick off one, you still had to deal with the other. And they encouraged each other, they emboldened each other.
With Orban out of the picture, Fico will find it harder to act alone against European consensus. Now, Orban didn't just stop with Slovakia. He also meddled in the Balkans, a region with emerging democracies deeply vulnerable to outside influence.
So one of the most fascinating aspects of Viktor Orbán's tenure was his general policy towards what we call the Western Balkans. These are the countries of the former Yugoslavia plus Albania. Viktor Orbán was surprisingly pro-enlargement of the European Union. But the reason for that was that he had close relationships with people like Aleksandar Vučić of Serbia, Milorad Dodik, the Bosnian Serb secessionist, and others And he believed that if he could bring these countries into the European Union during his tenure, he would essentially be broadening the illiberal bloc within the EU.
Remember, among the 27 members of the European Union, Hungary had often been the single spoiler to vote things down. So, if Orban could get a country like Serbia into the Union, that would make 2 consistent pro-Russia votes.
Serbia had a very pernicious policy towards Bosnia, towards Kosovo, even towards Montenegro, and behind Aleksandar Vučić during the entirety of that period were usually 2 or 3 people, Viktor Orbán being arguably the most significant, the others being Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping. So Orban, I think, became kind of the godfather of a kind of vision of illiberal enlargement of the European Union that obviously with his fall from power has hit the rocks.
Orban also backed the Serbian cause in other states, including in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
So Hungary has become arguably one of the most acute threats to Bosnia-Herzegovina's security and stability, in particular over the past 2 years, although that is on the back of a much longer process. Viktor Orbán has, for the better part of the last decade, been a very explicit backer of the Bosnian Serb secessionist regime in Banja Luka, in particular the longtime strongman Milorad Dodik.
Milorad Dodik is a top political figure in Republika Srpska, a Serb-dominant entity. Especially during his years in leadership, Dodik called for full independence and promoted laws that weakened Bosnia's central government authority.
During the past year, or about 18 months, when Milorad Dodik himself was removed from political office by Bosnian courts, owing to his essentially attacks against the constitutional order of that country, Viktor Orbán not only was very explicitly politically supporting Milorad Dodik, he in fact had deployed Hungarian special forces to Bosnia-Herzegovina itself and kept other forces on standby to aid Dodik's potential evacuation, which is to say his actual flight from Bosnia-Herzegovina, as he was at that time essentially a wanted fugitive.
And now on to Kosovo, an even smaller country than Bosnia. And here, Jasmin identifies the role of Hungarian intelligence as part of a hostile bloc, one that disrupts an already unstable young country.
Hungary under Orban, in particular, again, over the last decade or so, and in particular since the first Russian invasion of Ukraine, has really begun pursuing a very malign policy towards Kosovo, that not just very strongly sort of backing Serbia's, shall we say, rhetorical and normative non-recognition of Kosovo and backing its refusal to normalize ties between Belgrade and Pristina. But I think when you speak to folks in Kosovo, one of their concerns that they have certainly shared with both their European and American counterparts is the extent to which Hungarian officials, diplomats, and security officials who are within Kosovo, both through the UN offices there, through the KFOR NATO peacekeeping force, are essentially hostile actors, right? That they have worked very closely with Serbian intelligence agents, the Russian intelligence services, that they have, again, played this role of a Trojan horse within the broader Euro-Atlantic security structures in a country in the Western Balkans that has arguably been, unfortunately, probably the most volatile of the former Yugoslav territories.
By this point, you should be seeing the pattern. Hungary going country to support pro-Russia, anti-democratic leaders in an attempt to change the overall political picture in Europe. Orban's successor, the newly elected Petr Magyar, has pledged to pivot and realign Hungary as a strong partner for Europe and NATO. Overnight, everything Jasmin described now looks set to change. It gives struggling democracies in Eastern Europe a better chance at building stronger institutions. But I wouldn't be a journalist if I didn't leave you with a word of caution.
But we also have to remember that Petr Magyar is himself a former member of Fidesz. And I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that after 16 years of rule by Fidesz, there is an incredibly well-established sort of, to use a slightly controversial term, deep state or parastate that the party has established that winds through academia, through think tanks, certainly through the security and intelligence services. So I think we're going to watch a real push-pull play out over the next few months, possibly the next few years.
So what do you think? Will Peter Magyar follow through on his campaign promises? There are certainly great expectations for this new government, maybe too much considering its many challenges. That's all for now. DW News is giving you the latest and also sharing deep dives on here and across the rest of social media. I'm Melissa Chan. Until next time.